Hey everyone, welcome to my Multishot Marksman build guide. This is actually the self-cast multishot version and not the channel flurry version, because I just wanted to keep it as old school as possible and try to avoid to stand still as often as I can with a very squishy class at the moment with Marksman. And that was quite successful during the last week since cycle start. I managed to kill all the T4 bosses, Aberoth, farming at 500 corruption comfortably. So yeah, very successful and very happy with the build. I'm also done now with the written build guide here. Also added all the videos that I uploaded before, so you can check them out here. Also got a leveling section, starter gear that I will go over later. First I wanted to showcase a little bit here, 500 corruption. I think the game should be balanced around like 300 or 500, what EHT said. I can confirm that this build is actually like quite balanced. Not OP, but very fun also to play here. So I don't think that we will see any nerfs or any more buffs probably soon. In a very good state for me personally at the moment. It's also a very fast build. We are permanently over 100% movement speed. As you can see here, it's just very important to always move, otherwise, like I said, Marksman is not the tankiest class and you will die more often. I will go over the mechanics later, because there's quite a significant single target boost here coming from a skill node called Giant Slayer, and other than that we have pretty good clear with, I think now we have 17 projectiles at the moment. Yeah, pretty good mechanics for this build here, pretty straightforward. I'm only pressing multi-shot, shift, and smoke bomb for some utility, and the rest of the skills are pretty much only spawn, proc skills, sorry. And as you can see here, quite successful with the build at 500 corruption. Also safe if you constantly move here. I can also face tank a couple enemies if I know the attacks that are coming in. Just a little bit of showcase for you. I will also go over a boss kill later. We don't need all the gear yet. I'm pretty much done. We can maybe do a boss now to see how single target damage is for this build. Like I said, I also showcased like Shade already. I don't want to make this video too long. Aberoth kill. Just a little showcase at 500 corruption. Really important for you to know. It is important where your cursor is. If you aim a little bit further away from an enemy, the cone is smaller, and therefore also more projectiles can hit. And this is really important to keep the single target damage up. Otherwise, you will miss quite a lot of projectiles here. But as you can see, I can also like face tank a boss here. Sometimes just move a little bit to keep buffs up. It's a little bit better to stay underneath like an enemy. Therefore, it's easier to reach all the projectiles here. And on 500 corruption, I can pretty much easily do all the content right now. I would not say that it's like a crazy corruption pusher. Maybe like something like, I don't know, 700, 800 is probably the limit. I mean, not all the builds have to reach this high corruption. Probably 90% of the players are just staying with 300 to 500 corruption. But therefore, it's a very successful build, very fun build. That's the most important part always for me, that I enjoy the builds. And like I said, for a week when I was playing, very successful with this build so far. Let's go over all the mechanics for this build. So the goal was to stack as many multi-shot arrows as possible. There are 5 default. Then we can pretty much add Drelkos for an additional 4. In the multi-shot tree we have another node here to give us another 4 arrows, and there's a passive over here for an additional 4, giving us like 17 arrows. The powerful node, as I said before, is the Giant Slayer node in multi-shot tree, and this pretty much allows us to shotgun an enemy. So without it, only 1 arrow can hit, and you can look at the numbers. If like only a couple arrows hit, the numbers are not that high, but if you stay close and you really manage to hit all arrows here, you can get quite some good numbers out here. So almost 700k crits here. There's also a second number that I don't really know what it is, to be honest. Maybe like an additional arrow that hits. So over 700k crits, pretty strong. There's just a little bit more room to improve the damage here. My gear, I will go over later, is quite insane. I played Merchant's Guild, but still 700k crits with the current content is quite good. So I think also very balanced build. This is pretty much the main concept what I try to do, stacking arrows and to pretty much get the single target damage. With this node we lose a lot of like 80% more damage here or less damage now for each projectile, which makes clear speed a little bit lower, but as you probably saw in the video before or in the gameplay section, you could still kill trash mobs, and once you see like an enemy with high HP, you just go close and really like burst out the whole damage and then everything dies. So pretty simple mechanics actually for the multi-shot itself. For leveling until you reach this point, I can self-sustain multi-shot, as you can see with my mana pool here. I currently have 17.5 mana regen. With around 16, you can pretty much sustain the mana regen if you equip the Drelkos bow. There's also a way to get the mana back with shift over here. So once it's a little bit lower, you gain mana back. But I would highly recommend to get like 17, 18, then it's way easier for you to sustain the whole mana. During leveling, like I said, I also added it here in the leveling section. Pretty much everything is explained there. We'll make it short here. We level with puncture, so what you pretty much do is multi-shot, puncture. We have like a bleed setup where you constantly bring the mana back up, then you bring the mana pool down with multi-shot, stack all the bleeds up from Bloodthirst and from this node here. It's very easy to rush through the story with the setup, so it's pretty much only puncture, multi-shot, move on, a couple of stacks here, multi-shot, move on. Very fast leveling playthrough. If you manage to find a Dragon Song bow, which is almost like cheating, because with the Dragon Song you can proc the Dragon Fire quite a lot with this Giant Slayer here, and you will rush through the story. I would recommend to use the Flight of the First. This one you can also bring into endgame. It has quite some good stats, also 2 additional arrows, a lot of flat crit, which makes it easier to crit in the beginning also, and the movement speed. And there's this ancient flight buff here, which gives you 100% crit avoidance. So in the beginning, if you also have something like chance to blind, you will always have like CA is up. And with the stutter step playstyle, as you can see, the buff is always up. So very easy to have additional defenses with this bow in the beginning. Later we want to switch to Drelkos. This is pretty much the better bow for this build. That's pretty much it. Just a little tip for the leveling section: puncture, multi-shot, and once you can equip the Drelkos bow, you can even do it without this crit craft that I did here. You will lose some damage with the crit, but if you manage to get it with the crit mod with 1 LP, then pretty much switch to Drelkos and you can self-sustain your multi-shot later if you also manage to get, like I said, around 60 mana regen. This you can do with mana regen here, here, and here, and then you're safe to go. That's pretty much for some gameplay mechanics and leveling section. Now we'll go over the skills. So, for multi-shot, I will also try to get the leveling section up for you. If you enable multi-shot, first we go 1 point here for the damage, 1 point here for already have slow chance and bleed. The bleed helps in the beginning, the slow overall. Then we put 2 points here. Therefore our hit damage is stronger against slow targets. 2 more points for additional arrows, but also with more mana cost now. So the puncture multi-shot playstyle is very important now here. And we rush Giant Slayer. This is the big single target node here to pretty much push through the whole story in Monolith. After this, 2 points here, 1 point for the Pierce. It's one Pierce in the beginning is good enough. Then we rush this mechanic here, the double shot. The double shot is pretty much mana free and it's pretty much double damage. This repeatable makes you to have like fewer attacks so that the double shot will come. As you can see here, there was a double shot. 1, 2, 3, double shot. Very strong mechanic. Always bring this in with a multi-shot build. The Channel Flurry version cannot do strong pull and back-to-back anymore. That's why I personally think multi-shot self-cast is way better now. This is just my opinion. After this, I max out the Pierce. This node is new here, so we get physical penetration. We will do full physical, no cold damage with Morning Frost. This is something I wanted to do, but now I'm just going pure physical. After this, mana efficiency here. This node will bring your mana cost down to 9 before it is 10. So this can also save you up because we want the strong pull. Way more damage, less attack speed, which is not that bad. The attack speed that we have it a little bit lower, therefore it's also easier to sustain. And this is like, I think, 22 points. The 23 and the 24th point I put here. This is a little trick that I like to do. We get a little bit more attack speed. And this haste that we gain here is the default duration haste for 4 seconds. All the other haste buffs that we can get from here, or for example from Falconer, they're either 2 or 1 seconds. I like to get this one because it's 4 seconds, and therefore once I proc it, you have this long haste duration here. You can see this. Otherwise, if I manage to get maybe the other one from Agility, this one was the 4 second. The good thing now is with 1.1 it will not override anymore. So I'm pretty much having this crazy movement speed buff up all the time during combat. So it's a very fast monolith pusher. And the last note, some people might think, okay, why do you not take point blank? It would be a lot more single target damage. That's definitely true. I just don't like the less hit damage to far away enemies because sometimes in combat, arena, difficult content, I like to stay a little bit more on range and then attack if I feel more safe. That's why the last point I would put just into here for a little bit more global damage and not just the less damage part. And this is it for Multishot. Second skill, Shift, pretty classic setup. As much cooldown, recovery speed as possible. The momentum to keep really the speed up for 1.5 seconds after shifting. Then the mana, the swift recovery here to get the mana back if we cast Multishot quite a long time. Then we get the invulnerability, a little bit of dodge after we shift, and we proc the Shurikens here with 5 points. The Shurikens are pretty much only there for the armor buff. So we start here, 3 points. Additional Shurikens, Blade Shield, this is the mechanic where the Shurikens are around you. And therefore we have a duration where we get 30% increased armor for each Shuriken. 1 point here is enough to keep the armor buff up, as you can see here. 67%, 67%. If I would not have the point in there, it would go a little bit lower. So only you need to put 1 point into here. By the way, this is not combat, this 67%. I think it's over a little bit over 50%. I don't know why in this zone the numbers are higher. So my armor is around 50% all the time. Then really important to get the 100% pierce chance here. Otherwise the uptime is pretty much gone when they hit and the Shurikens are gone. So definitely use the pierce here. This is just a little trick you can do. I learned from Lizard back in the days. Immobilize here for 0.5 seconds. So if you have it up, someone is behind you, they stand still. You can just recover by walking away. It's a little bit of a defensive buff. Not really like necessary because we don't need the Fist Shred since the Fist Shred comes from our passive here. But it's quite a cool technique here to get a little bit of blind chance, immobilize in the beginning, which always helps. And the cooldown doesn't count here because it's a proc skill. The next one is Smoke Bomb. Also a very classic setup. 2 points here, 1 point, 3 points here for the Silver Shroud. Silver Shroud is probably the best defensive mechanic for a marksman, so we try to get as much or as many Silver Shroud stacks as possible. Sadly, only here, and the other one comes from here. Still, I always try to cut Smoke Bomb wherever I am to get the Silver Shroud stacks up. In a boss fight, of course, you want to keep it next to the boss, so that we also have our Dust Shrouds up. It can also cleanse ailments, also very important since dots are very strong right now in the game. The cleanse we get here, and we get from Smoke Bomb, so that's a good utility skill to also clean this one up. Duration, the slow and the blind we usually don't need. You can put also those 2 points into here to get a little bit more area, but I don't really need the bigger area, so I just kept it in there. This is more like a leveling thing where you get a little bit more base crit. If you struggle with crit and don't have 100% crit chance, the blind will enemies not make you crit anymore. So this helps, but you don't have to take those 2 points in here. The last skill, this is a little bit where you can play around. In the leveling phase, like I said, we go with Puncture. You can read through the whole skill tree in the written guide. Here I actually made it to make it like a proc skill as well. So when I hit the enemy here, suddenly there will come out some black arrows. These black arrows will give me a frenzy duration of 3 seconds. That's 20% increased attack speed. They will give me Dust Shroud stacks. They will give me a Crimson Shroud stack, which is also less damage over time taken. It's random, so I understand that not many people like this random appearance here of the black arrows. You can also manually cast it to have more around and then kite around, so that your Dust Shroud stacks are a little bit more up and make you a little bit more tanky. That's why I used it. You can also simply just use Decoy. I have Decoy as a panic button unspecialized, which always helps with the taunt. But if you like to have Decoy instead of Dark Quiver, it's perfectly fine. Go with the extra charge here, go with mana efficiency, go with frailty, go with the duration, put 1 point into here so that after the explosion you get additional crit multi. It's not that high. I'm currently, also this is not true, I have around 25% in combat, so you have a little bit of extra crit multi. Like I said, Dark Quiver or Decoy, completely up to you. But I like to press, or in some builds I don't like to press as many buttons as possible, so I only have to pretty much multi-shot, shift, smoke bomb, evade. This is pretty much the only combo that I need to do. Very comfortable to play, and if there's a little bit more dangerous situations around, then I press also the Dark Quiver and I have a little bit more buffs here. So it's pretty much up to you how you want to play this. That's it for the skills. Let's go over the passives. The skill progression bar is in the written guide. I will just go over the notes real quick. We start with the Swift Assassin, a lot of attack speed, flat physical damage. 1 point here to get the evasion, increased dodge rating, less damage taken while moving. This one here, haste on hit, is not that important because we have it in the multi-shot tree, but we get increased damage for each movement speed that we have. We have a lot of movement speed in this build. Some people like to do this one, which is 5% more damage when we have haste. I compared the damage. This one is better than this one. We can also combine it, but for me it was better to put it somewhere else. So I can highly recommend this node here because of the high movement speed. 8 points here, flat health, dexterity. Dexterity is always dodge and damage, so very good value here. 5 points for the glancing blow and the flat dodge. Let's go over Blade Dancer real quick. I just put 8 points here for additional glancing blow in the dex, so that we reach the 31% here. And like I said, with the smoke bomb and Dark Quiver combo, we can get quite high numbers here with the glancing blow and the dodge itself. For Marksman, this is pretty much where we waste all our points in. 8 points, very important here. This is also how our life sustain works, so we don't play with life leech, we play with life on hit and life on crit, which synergizes very well with this amulet. I will go over later. We have life on hit here, we have life on crit here, and we have life on crit here. Therefore, in combat, when all the projectiles hit, or even if enemies are around you, you will see pretty much your life bar always at 100%, and therefore we get the 100 or the 30% more damage on physical damage. So very, very strong node also in the beginning with attack speed. You can pretty much sustain all the incoming dots. Very, very strong passive here. 5 points to get the haste after. A little bit quality of life if there are no enemies around, so you can have the haste uptime for you. Then 5 points new threshold bonus for the flat crit for bow. Very important now to reach 100%. We also get a little bit of flat damage here and increased crit. 1 point here in crit vulnerability is enough to get all the 10 stacks up. As you can see, where is it? Over here. There's the crit vulnerability. That's always extra 20 flat crit that you can add on your crit chance. Right now I'm at 70. It's a little bit higher if we also get the Barrage of Pain buffs up plus the 20, then I'm almost reaching 100%. And as you can see here, if I'm attacking, you pretty much only see the yellow numbers, and the rest is a little bit of bleed dots in the background. 5 points here, crit avoidance, bow critical strike multiplier. The rest we get from here, and an additional craft. I think I have it. Where do I have the critical strike? There it is, critical strike avoidance. So 3 parts where we get over 100%. 5 points for flat dodge, for the cooldown on concentration. I didn't waste points here because I don't really have the damage uptime that often if I'm standing too close to enemies. That's why I don't want it to get the damage here, and I prefer to have it here. 4 points for movement speed, increased dodge, and the less hit damage taken with concentration. Very important. This one is new. Also very strong that we get Fizz Shred for free, so this will multiply our damage quite a lot, the physical damage that we do. 1.1 point classic Silver Shroud stack abuse, so that our next attack or incoming attack is a free dodge. Sadly, we have to put 4 points in here. Only 1 point would also sustain. This one gives us 250 increased bow damage, so we will get a lot of bow damage or damage with multi-shot with the arrows that we stack in this mod here. Increased damage per arrow with multi-shot. Pretty much the only sources where we need increased damage, the rest is more multipliers. Flat damage here, very strong. It used to be, back in the days, a little bit, yeah, not as good because you have way more damage taken. I think it was 12% before and a little bit less flat damage that we get. Now I think the value is pretty good here. Also, my last 2 points, I'm level 98, I will put in here for a lot more stun chance. I think at around like 300 corruption, I was pretty much perma-stunning Shade, Timeline bosses, so very cool mechanic here. 1 point here for me now is enough to perma-crit. While you're leveling, you put all 5 points in here to help the crit out. 5 points for the crit multi, 10 here for mana. This is pretty much the more damage that you take, so 100% of your mana cost. I'll do 9% more mana with multi-shot. Increased mana is always good, the mana regen is always good to sustain it. And very important, rush this node for additional arrows. With Giant Slayer is a huge damage boost for you in this passive node. Okay, let's go over the gear real quick. So the only 2 uniques that you need for this build is the Drelker's Bow and the Xitara's Amulet. Also in endgame, if there's harder content, you can use something like Ravenous Void and Auroras, which I actually took in the Aberoth fight because I was quite squishy and I needed to learn the mechanics first. Also the Nightbringer is something I can recommend because of the 70% more hit damage with against blinded enemies. But I would recommend to get it with like 2 or 3 LP at least. Otherwise, we will lose a lot of like important stats, something like Chill, Bow Attack Speed, Fizz. So yeah, 2 or 3 LP I would more recommend to before you switch to this one. So let's go over the stats real quick. Like realistically, it's more to get like a 1 or like a 2 LP. Drelkers, I got a 3 LP here. I missed the Fizz pen roll, but I'm still very happy with the bow, of course. We got the hybrid crit, we got the bow physical for a lot more damage. Also the stun chance here is pretty good, so that we can perma-stun some of the 300 corruption, 400 corruption bosses. Also, of course, we take it because of the -4 bow attack speed, or the cost, and the additional arrows that we have here for multi-shot. Xitara's has no downside with no leech here because we have this life on hit, life on crit sustain. But the important one here is the more physical damage while at full health. We are pretty much always on full health. This one is also quite easy to get with LP, so try to get something like crit multi, fizz pen, physical damage, increased dodge or health. Always a good value here. Then for the helmet, I'm not a fan of this Peak of the Mountain. We can easily reach like 100% crit. That's why I went with this Dragon Visage here for the crit multi and the fire resistance. Get the plus levels to multi-shot, and the most important stat here, increased damage per arrow with multi-shot. Increased health is good, crit avoidance is good, endurance is good. This is actually my worst piece of gear that I have. With something like a sealed mod would be increased damage while wielding a bow, vitality, dex. So you can play a little bit around here, but this has all the important stats that I need. This base here is very good because of the crit avoidance and the flat crit that we get for our multi-shot. Try to get it with vitality or dex. I prefer vitality because I needed way more health here. That's why I also went for increased health and flat health. Armor seal is pretty good, and of course again the increased damage per arrow with multi-shot. I would actually recommend to get the increased damage per arrow as a T6 or a T7 exalted mod here. You could also go with increased health if you struggle with your survivability. For the quiver, the Spider Cell quiver is actually quite good because we have more damage to slowed enemies. We slow pretty much everything, also with the slow here and the slow here on in the multi-shot tree. Then we have the belt. Oh, sorry, by the way, the chill here, of course, very important. You can get something like elemental resistance, something like shred. I would probably prefer more to have a little bit resistance here for the quiver. For the belt, get the mana regen, get increased physical damage, seal the ailment cleanse, and get as much health as possible. For the rings, I always like to go with silver rings just because of the movement speed. I like to be fast with my marksman. So we go dex over physical damage actually here, because the dex also gives us, next to the increased damage, some flat dodge, which is always good. Get resistances on top of it, the mana regen like I said, and a little bit of health. I did the crit avoidance here. Some resistances, dex, mana regen. For the gloves, the plated gauntlets are good for capping the endurance, get the crit chance, get the dex. You can also get this experimental one over here, the armor mitigation applied to damage over time. You don't need it, like I said, I played it with these gloves here or with Ravenous Void. Endurance, hybrid health, and some resistance as a seal. This one here also as much defensive as you can go. High movement speed, vitality, health, hybrid health. Seal, something like dodge, something like armor. What would actually be quite good is to get the frenzy experimental mod here. Therefore, after we use shift, we always have the frenzy buff up and we don't rely on dark quiver. This is also that I can highly recommend. It's a little bit harder to get, but would be like a nice change in the gearing process here. And the last one is the Ancient Coins Relic, which gives us a lot of increased crit chance to reach 100%. A little bit of health gain on crit. Get crit multi, get dex, endurance, frailty, also something that you can seal. But also to have it here, it's good to have less damage taken from enemies, and health or resistances as your seal. So as you can see, amazing gear actually. These are all the uniques that I recommend. The Flight of the First, of course, only for leveling. For idols, get 2 of these. Increased damage barrel with multi-shot. Always try to get max rolled here, the 6%. The suffix can be something like bow critical strike chance or poison resistance. I would recommend the bow critical strike chance. The rest of the idols, pretty much armor, health, resistances, pretty much everything that you need to make your like defensive stats look a little bit better. And for blessings, pretty much straightforward. I would recommend Void Resistance. You could go crit multi, but I prefer the Void Resistance here. Lightning Resistance, the All Resistance, not crit avoidance anymore, we go All Resistance. And then we go with the armor, the flat armor and the increased armor to make our defensive stats, like I said, a little bit better here. That's pretty much it for my build. You could reach a little bit more health here, something like between 2.5, 3k, if I have a little bit better mods here on my suffixes. Other than that, I had like a lot of success with this build, a lot of fun with this build. I can really highly recommend it for everyone that is nostalgic and like to play Diablo 2 Multishot. One of the best builds for Marksman that I definitely played. I will push a little bit more corruption, probably, like I said, between 600, 700, 800 is the cap where it's fun, and then it's a little bit more dangerous to survive. I will try to push arena as far as I can, but for now this was pretty much the cycle for me. I hope you really enjoyed the build here, and I will see you guys soon.